pull up a cup of coffee, and let's get this party started.
We're the uplines you didn't know you needed, but now you have.
This is the podcast for women who are building a direct sales business, but want to do it the right way.
Melanie has a decade of experience in direct sales. She's earned the top in industry 4 years in a row and has grown a multi-million-dollar organization. She gives a no BS approach to leadership, recruitment, and organization.
And my bestie Katie has you covered with the rest. From the relationships, the do's and don'ts of branding, her content has been viewed by millions. She doesn't just talk the talk, but she teaches people how to create an intentional brand too.
All right, let's get this party started.
Well, hey everyone, welcome to the Direct Sales Done Right podcast. It is Melanie and Katie, or as Kelly in the last podcast episode. But we are here for another episode, and we're excited because we are going to dive into a little bit of mindset today, because I feel as though mindset is the root of all of your success. And so we're going to chat a little bit about that today, give you some really practical tips to help you stop breaking promises that you've made to yourself. But before we do that, let's take a moment to just recognize you guys. You are our listeners and we love you dearly. We also love when you screenshot the podcast episode you're listening to and you tell us what your biggest takeaway was. And then you head on over to Instagram and you tag at Katie Writes Content, at Melanie Mitro, and Chic Influencer, because we like to feature you on our stories, but we also like to just chat with you about what it was that really impacted you, or even hear some future suggestions for podcast episodes. So we like to pick somebody that's tagged us every single week, and we call those our listeners of the week. So Jennifer Swartz, you are our listener of the week, my friend. I know you. You've shown up in my DMs quite a few times. So if you can just send Katie and I a private message, we will do a little mini coaching session with you in the DMs. We'll choose one of your biggest challenges and help coach you through that. So thank you so much for being a loyal listener. And don't forget to keep tagging us on social. All right. Let's talk a little bit about promises and breaking promises to ourselves. So you want to tee us up for today?
I do want to tee us up. So I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about in my own personal experience, when are commitments or promises that I made, not to anyone else, just to me, that I didn't see through. And so maybe it is a commitment, and many of us can relate to this, in January to lose weight, right? And then we don't follow through. We don't lose the weight, or we don't commit to the workout, or we don't, whatever it might be. Or in business, if you set this big goal for yourself and you're like, there is no plan B, this is going to happen. And then there's like a little bit of distraction and you have an opportunity to hang out for a week with your friends and you kind of step away from your business because, life. And you think about all those times that you look at your life and you go, how many times have I broken a promise to myself? Well, the other day I was listening to the Ed Mylett podcast. Love his shorter podcast episodes where he really just brings the motivation. Okay. And he's just this great speaker. And he told the story about how a listener had asked him a question. She had been following an influencer, a big influencer who was known in the motivational world. And she had a huge, massive following of people who wanted to aspire to be very much like her, successful like her. Yeah. And one day she was in her stories and she said, you know what? I just decided I'm not getting out of bed today. And she decided she was going to pull up the covers and she was not going to go to work. She was going to cancel all of her calls. She was going to cancel everything that she had on her list. And she asked Ed, what do you think of this? Do you think it's okay to just not show up? Yeah. And this is where it kind of got controversial because I'm like, I can see it. Like, we talk a lot about mental health. Yeah. There's a big mental health, just all over social media. We talk about mental health. Right?
And last week, you told me, you were like, just take a week off.
Yeah, I did. And
we had this conversation.
I did. But Ed Mylett was like, no, you don't, because you made a promise to yourself. You made a promise to yourself to show up. You made a promise to yourself to achieve the goals. You made a promise to the people who are anticipating calls with you. This is not to say that life doesn't happen and there's something that needs your undivided attention, an emergency. Your family needs you first and it requires you to cancel. Yeah. But this is you saying, I don't have it in me today. And I started thinking about that, and I've been thinking a lot about how right now in this very season, I've never been busier. We just launched a book. We launched an academy. We have been, on a personal note, we had my sister-in-law's shower. We had, hockey. Every single day. We're between teams right now. So there's a lot of in and out. So I have never been busier. And the other day I woke up in the morning and I was like, I don't know if I have it in me. And I mustered up this just confidence in myself to know that showing up for other people, it matters. Like I made a promise to myself to show up like I matter enough to other people.
I love that.
And so I got out of bed. I started my day. I brushed my teeth. I did my workout. I did my personal development. I read my Bible. I read the scripture. And I was like, I made a promise to myself. I made a promise to myself that we have a goal that we want to achieve in Chic Influencer by the end of the year. And by gosh, we are going to get there. We are going to do everything in our power to get there and commit to it. And I made a promise to myself. And it got me thinking about how, like, if you make a promise to your kids that you're going to pick them up from school at 3:00, and then you go, I just don't feel like it.
You never do that.
Right? You want to break a promise to show up because you're committed to your kids. But why do we keep breaking promises to ourselves? Is it because we don't feel like we matter enough? Is it because we don't love ourselves enough? Is it because we just don't feel like we're actually capable of achieving what we set out to do?
Or we're afraid that we might actually have success and then we won't know how to handle it once we get there.
Right. So we really have to think about those things and ask ourselves, am I a promise breaker? You might be the most committed person to your friends and to your family, but when it comes to yourself and the goals that you've set for yourself, are you actually committed? Or are you okay with continuing to break promises? And I'm just going to be really transparent with you. If you're sitting here going, I really am unhappy with my weight, why don't you make a promise to yourself to actually lose the weight? If you're really unhappy with your current business, why don't you actually do something about it to actually improve it? If you're really unhappy with your marriage right now, what are you doing on your end to make your marriage better? And I'm not saying this from a place of harshness, but I feel like sometimes we need to hear the truth. And the truth of the matter is we've become just so used to breaking promises to ourselves that it's just become norm. It's actually very hard to commit to a promise that we've made to ourselves.
Yeah.
So today, I think it would be, of course, Melanie and I are very tactical. We give good advice, but I actually want you to sit with what I just said. And if it's uncomfortable, it means that you actually have room to grow. If you are uncomfortable with the idea of Katie just called out, like this idea of being unhappy with my current weight, or Katie just called out maybe my marriage, or Katie just called out, I'm not doing it from a place of harshness. I'm doing it from a place of I have been there and I get it. And somebody sometimes needs to whisper some truth that you need to stop breaking promises to yourself.
Yeah. So true.
So I know you like tactical, and I know that you want to kind of dive into it. So let's actually talk about, like, number one, when it comes to why you are breaking promises to yourself, it might be that you aren't acknowledging the root causes.
Yeah. So I really feel like before you can go into action, because most people, again, want the tactical steps, like, tell me what it is that I need to change. But we can give you a checklist of things that you need to change. But if you don't actually understand why you keep making the decision over and over again, you will continue to make the same decision over and over again. And I find that a lot of times people, they don't want to actually get and sit and be quiet with themselves. And I was telling Katie this right before we hit record on this podcast episode, is I had this come up and I actually flat out asked somebody, I said, you keep missing your goal every month and you know you're capable of more. You're telling me that, but do you want to know what it is that's holding you back? Like, do you? Because she kept saying, like, I don't know what it is. And I just said, but do you want to know? And if you do want to know, it's the first tactical step is to actually sit down with your journal and ask yourself why you keep breaking the promise. So you actually need to sit down and say to yourself, like, what is the root cause? And you just keep asking yourself why. It's like, because I'm afraid of failing. I'm afraid of what other people will think. Or is it that I'm afraid that I will have success? And so once you begin to sit down and really say, and just keep asking yourself, if you write down one answer and you're like, yeah, that's it. Is it really it? Like, really think about what it is. Or do you start to feel guilty? Like, okay, I'm going to be successful. And then that means I'm going to have to sacrifice time with my kids and time with my spouse. And the only way I can really build my business is if I work 24/7. But is that true? Do you know that that is the truth? Can you prove that that's the only way to do it? Do you think maybe there's another way? And so I really want you to actually sit down and challenge your own thoughts and really, really understand, like, okay, this is where it's rooted in. This is the part of me that really is, this is getting me stuck. And then it's not that we just journal it and close the journal. I always challenge myself to actually like read it every day and decide what I'm going to do differently. Right. So this is kind of the foundational part, right? And even just jotting down your goals, putting your goals in there too, reading your goals to yourself, like, is this really what I want? Because sometimes I think we say, I want this success, but then we've only written that down because it's what we see our upline or our sideline or our crossline or other people doing. So we really have to ask ourselves, like, what is the actual reason that, like, do I want the goal? And what is it that's standing in my way of achieving that goal?
Right. So point one is you have to get to the root cause. And this is heart work.
It is.
And it's actually somewhat painful too, because that Melanie sort of, you sort of explained it as you have to get deeper. You have to get deeper. It's almost like you're peeling away layers of onions. And every time you're asking yourself why. So I'll give you an example of something that in my life has been true. So when I was a kid, I was pretty overweight. And I remember very clearly being in 4th grade and I was crying because there was a girl in school that was bullying me. And my mom kept telling me I have a good heart. And she listed a name of people, like names of people in our lives who were overweight. And they were wonderful people. It was like my 4th grade teacher. She was wonderful. My mom, my grandmother, like all of these people in my life who were overweight. And she basically said, you don't have to be thin to be a good person. But in my 4th grade mind, I interpret it as if I am thin, then I'm not a good person.
Wow.
And it took a lot of hard work for me to actually discover this through just journaling and layering. So I realized that a lot of times one of the promises that I would break to myself is I would see significant, weight loss in the goals or in the workouts that I was doing or the nutrition that I was following. But what I realized was I would get to a point where I felt like I was getting too fit. I'm not kidding you. And I would actually sabotage and I would go, ooh. And I think I've talked about this on a podcast once before, but when we say we get to the root, it was very hard for me to peel back those layers, but I knew it was in there. And so just like I started to see sabotage whenever I would get to a goal, if you're ending the month just shy of the goal, there's no reason that you couldn't have gotten there.
Totally.
There's actually no reason why you couldn't have gotten there, but there is something in you that's saying, I can't. And there is something in the root cause of why that's actually preventing you from moving forward. So in my case, when I think about the weight loss and the stagnation, it has a lot more to do with how I associate weight loss with like the quality of my character. And so for you, you're probably going to layer this and you're going to say, there is actually a deeper reason.
Yeah.
And that's when we encourage you to actually talk to somebody about it, whether it's a success partner or it is an accountability partner, or even if you go to therapy, you will be amazed with what you take away. Okay. So the second point that we want to make, so we talked about getting to the root cause. We're doing a lot of that heart work. But that's not just going to get us to action, because I think sometimes people stay in personal development and heart work a little bit too long.
Yeah, because that's also comfortable. It doesn't require change.
Oh, yes. And we always see this like hoarders of information where they go, yeah, you have motivated me. I'm walking on fire. I'm so excited. And then they never take action on it.
Yeah.
So point 2 is you have to have an action plan. And I don't know if you know this about Melanie and I, but we kind of specialize in this. I wrote a book. Melanie's done courses. She has lived it out in real time. And we teach this in our community. We teach this in our Direct Sales Done Right Academy, is to stop just sitting on the pot, just sitting there. Like you actually have to go do, you have to go take action. But if you aren't sure what that action looks like and you don't have the accountability, that's where we stay sort of stagnant in our, oh, I know the root problem, kumbaya, instead of like, let's go do. Right. So a couple of things that you can do. Number 1, get in those income producing activities. So Melanie and I created in the Direct Sales Done Right social media planner we actually have all of this laid out for you. We tell you exactly what you need to do to be successful every single day. It's not pretty. It's not sexy. It's not that fun all the time. It's pretty mundane.
Right.
But they are the things that you need to do. The second thing is accountability. I am a huge supporter of the Direct Sales Done Right community because that place is fire.
Yes, it is. It is awesome.
Lately.
Yeah.
And we have no problem calling you out too. If you tell us what your goals are and you're staying in that stagnant place, we'll call it out. We call it to the light. That's why people are getting their goals met. And then the third is the mile marker mindset, which is a big part of what I talk about in the book, is just having the big goal, but instead of putting your focus and energy into the end result, you're putting your focus and energy into the small step that's right in front of you. So action. Point number 2, absolutely getting into action.
Yes. Yes. Okay, so let's talk about the third. All right. So number 3.
I feel like I teed it up perfectly for you because this is you.
You did. It's perfect. I actually glanced over and I was like, get time management. All right. So I love time management. And honestly, point number 3 is actually manage your time and prioritizing. But I want to set that up by telling that story of I wasn't always good at time management. You will see me every single week on my social talk about time blocking, prioritizing. I always am talking about hacks for being more productive, but it only comes out of a place where I walked through some dark seasons in my personal life. When I started my business, I was probably like a lot of you that are listening, stay-at-home mom, or like Katie, worked full-time, both having kids at home and not really having a work day. We couldn't sit down and for 8 hours build our businesses. It was sort of this mishmash pockets of time. And I was so passionate and on fire for my business and my goals that I was actually not paying attention to the other things in my life. So the dishes, the laundry, my kids, my husband, my relationships. And I was like riddled with mom guilt because of that. And it really caused Matt to really give me an ultimatum in our relationship of, hey, you are not the person I married. This isn't what I expected our life to be like. And we can't keep going on like this. So you have to choose. You want to keep building this business or do you want to have a family and be married to me? And so, of course, I didn't want that to happen, but I also didn't want to give up my business either. And luckily, I had a great mentor that came into my life that talked to me about time blocking. And so time management is what has allowed me to then be able to say there's a lot of things that we can do in our business, but what must we do to really move the needle forward, right? At the end of the day, we want to make money. We want to make an impact. We want to have the freedom to do the things that we love. So obviously, when it comes to time management, if you're listening to this right now and you've uncovered your blocks, you've gotten to the root cause, you're ready to take some action, what I find is that a lot of people just in their calendar, they leave a chunk and it just says work on my business. But what I want you to do is, and maybe this is a great first step, make a list of all of the things you think you need to do to achieve the goal for just this upcoming month. If it's getting customers to sign up and purchase your product, if you want 5 of them, make a list. And then let's prioritize that list. Okay. So we say, all right, I know I need to invite. All right, well, let's go to today or the rest of the week. What days, when are we going to invite? We're going to leave a half hour for invites. And then we know we need to post on social media. And we can go back to last week's episode. You can listen to how we walked you through a week's layout, but I need to make a post and I need to do stories. So then that goes in the calendar. I'm going to do it during my lunch break or, in the afternoon when I have a break in the kids' activities. And so we begin to place the must-dos into the calendar. And then we are accountable to actually doing them instead of waking up in the morning and saying, I'm going to listen to this podcast and I'm going to watch this training and I'm going to scroll social media for 20 minutes to get inspired. We then pull out our time blocker and go, invites. Okay, let me pull out my list. Let me open up my app or my phone or whatever, and let me start doing and sending my invites. So now it's just this like you actually are planning and preparing. Before you just open and unlock the screen, you actually refer to the planner. What are the things I need to do? Are they a must do? Are they nice to do? Am I avoiding the work or am I getting to work? And those are just some really tangible ways that we have been able to build such successful businesses. Right. And at the end of the day, this really helps me. I will pull out my time blocker and my planner and I get my highlighter out. And sometimes I'll do this throughout the day too, but sometimes the day gets away from us and we're just like busy doing. And I will highlight what like the must-dos that needed to get done. And if I look at my day and those must-dos didn't get highlighted, I learned to discipline myself. And unfortunately, sometimes it can be 9:30 at night and I'm doing a must-do because I'm committed to the goal that I said that I was going to do. But sure as crap, the next morning I'm actually going to prioritize that first. Like, I'm not going to make that a habit because that's not really a healthy one.
Right.
But at first you got to kind of learn, right? You start to become aware of, what are the things that need to get done.
Yeah.
And you're going to get overwhelmed along the way. I feel like we're actually navigating through a season of overwhelm, in this season of our lives where we offer a lot of services. There are days where we sometimes look at our time blockers and go, there's not enough hours to get it all done. And then we actually look at the must-dos and we're like, these are the must-dos. So even of the must-dos, there are some that still get taken off.
Right. I love that. And one more point that I want to make along those lines. Melanie and I do work our business full time, but I was not always in a season where I had the opportunity to work my side gig full time. When I started, I was working full time as an educator. And what I realized was that my goals have to align with the time that I can commit to them. So you start to learn when you get really focused on the action that you're taking, you start to be very realistic about what can you actually achieve in the time that you have.
Yeah.
And without burning out either. And so I really want you to remember that even if in your back of your mind, you're saying, well, Melanie can work it full time and Katie can work it full time. We weren't always like that. That wasn't always the case. And there are still some times where I'll look at Melanie and say, I need to make sure that I am prioritizing time with my kids.
Yes.
And going back to what I said at the very beginning, if you're literally at a point where you're like, this is really hard right now and I actually do need to take a breath, carve it into the calendar.
Yes.
Actually block out time. I know that I did this for tomorrow on Friday in our calendar. I actually blocked out time knowing that I was actually at capacity because of the long weeks that we've had. So it's not that you break a promise to yourself. It's that you actually have become very good about prioritizing yourself when you know that you need a mental health day, when you know that you need a break.
Yeah.
And so I hope that these tips today have really helped you. So number one, we're getting to the root cause. Number two, we're taking action. We get clear, and we would love to see you in the Direct Sales Done Right Academy or the Direct Sales Done Right community, because that is where we really hold people accountable. Number three, you've got to start focusing on the time you can commit. Your time blocker, have that as a tool. It is an incredible tool. I don't know what we would do without it. I actually have no idea. I would be out there in left field trying to figure it out.
And any time that I'm not home to do a planning session on the weekend, I always start my week just completely out of sorts.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you guys, we hope that you love this episode of the Direct Sales Done Right Academy. And if it hit home, if it actually was an episode that you were like, ooh, it brought the fire, it really got me excited, we would love for you to share it on your platform, sure, but we would also love for you to leave a review. And that helps other people find our podcast and hear more about it. So a review would be awesome. A tag is awesome as well. We'll see you next time on the Direct Sales Done Right podcast.
All right, so if you loved today's episode, make sure you head over to wherever you listened to the episode today and leave us a rating and review. And also take a little screenshot and tag us on Chic Influencer. We'll feature you in our stories. Plus, we'd love to get your feedback and hear from our listeners.
Until next week, let's make chic happen.